Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be getting into something a little different, something you might not expect. Leather Goods Production Supervisor. Ever thought about that?
Not your typical day at the office, right? But it's a world where, honestly, artistry and efficiency collide. You've got traditional craftsmanship butting right up against modern manufacturing.
hmm
Fascinating stuff.
Right, and we're here to break it all down, give you the inside scoop, so whether you're thinking about switching careers, about to interview someone in this field, or just curious how those amazing bags and shoes get made, stick with us. This is going to be good.
It really is. I think people might be surprised when they realize how complex this job actually is. I mean, it's easy to picture a factory floor and think, okay, it's all kind of mechanical, right? But the truth is, there are so many human skills involved. Absolutely essential skills, really, if you want to succeed in this environment.
And that's what we're diving into today. We've got some awesome resources from RoleCatcher to help us out. They have this career guide that really digs into like the nitty-gritty of what these folks do every day. And let me tell you, they don't sugarcoat it. This is not a desk job, folks. We're talking about a busy factory floor, things moving a mile a minute.
Exactly. And it's not just about keeping up with the speed of it all, right? You're managing a whole team, you're making sure the quality's top notch, and you got to be ready for anything because, trust me, unexpected stuff, it's going to happen.
For sure. There was something in the guide that really stuck out to me. It's this quote that just nails the whole job description. Overseeing and coordinating day-to-day production activities. I mean, okay, on the surface, it sounds kind of basic, but when you really think about it, that covers a lot of ground.
It does. It's a real balancing act. On the one hand, you got to make sure those production goals are met. The leather's cut right, the pieces are sewn together, those luxury goods are actually making it out the door. But then there's the other side of it, the human side. You're responsible for the people doing all that work, making it all happen.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. Because the guide, it highlights some skills you wouldn't necessarily think of when you picture a factory job. Like, they talk about social perceptiveness. And get this, they rank it as 55% important for this role. That's huge.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder, right? In a world where everything's becoming automated, why are these human skills even more important, not less?
I think it's because no matter where you are, whether it's a factory floor or a fancy corporate office, if you're in a leadership role, you gotta understand and motivate people. That's key. Think about it. You've got these tight deadlines, demanding clients, maybe even some temperamental machinery you're dealing with. Being able to like read the room and change how you communicate depending on who you're talking to, that's gold.
Yeah, it's like the more automated things get, the more important that human touch becomes.
Exactly. And it's not just about, keeping things running smoothly. It's about building a culture where people work together and are constantly trying to get better at what they do. And the guide, it emphasizes how important that is, especially as you move up to those higher management positions.
And that brings us to another set of skills the guy talked about that I thought was interesting. Negotiation and persuasion. I mean, you hear those, you might think like, oh yeah, salespeople. But how does that work on a factory floor? Are we talking about negotiating with, I don't know, leather suppliers to get the best materials?
Oh, absolutely, especially as you move up the ranks. But picture this, right? A vital piece of equipment breaks down, throws the entire production schedule off. You've got to negotiate a solution with your team right there on the spot. Maybe convince someone to pull an extra shift while you're trying to manage expectations with the higher ups. It takes some finesse, that's for sure. You got to think on your feet.
Sounds like you need some serious people skills on top of
Hmm.
like knowing how to actually make this stuff.
Yeah.
Got to be tough, but fair, right?
100%. And it's not like those skills, they just poof, appear overnight. It
hmm
got me thinking about like the whole career path this guide lays out. You don't just waltz in and suddenly you're the big leather goods production supervisor. They really stress the whole learning by doing thing. You start at the bottom, work your way up.
Makes sense, especially in a field where experiences, like everything, right?
Hmm.
The guide walks through different career stages. Starts with entry level, like a production assistant. What does that even look like day to day?
Okay, so picture yourself back on that crazy busy factory floor, right? As a production assistant, you're the extra hands. You're the eyes on the details, making sure things run smoothly. You might be doing quality control, making sure each piece meets like those crazy high standards, because we're talking luxury goods here. Or you could be helping out the more experienced craftspeople, learning how to cut, how to stitch, maybe even like getting a feel for different types of leather. It's pretty cool.
So it's a real like hands-on apprenticeship kind of thing.
Totally. And As you get better, as you prove yourself, you might move up to production coordinator. Now you're starting to call some of the shots, coordinating those day-to-day things we were talking about, training new hires, maybe even getting into the nitty-gritty of production costs and like how to make things more efficient.
So more of that balancing act, hands-on work, but also thinking about the big picture.
Yeah, you got it. You're the bridge between the management folks and the team on the ground, making sure everyone's on the same page, working towards the same goal.
And then, bam, you've made it, Leather Goods Production Supervisor.
Whoa, hold your horses. It doesn't end there. The guide actually talks about a bunch of different paths you can take from there. Some supervisors, the ones with the experience and maybe like some extra education under their belt, they move into management, right? Overseeing huge teams, multiple production lines, the whole shebang. Others, they might get really specialized in something, like quality assurance or figuring out how to make the whole process better, faster. They become the go-to experts.
So there's room to move up and branch out in this field.
Absolutely. And here's something I thought was really interesting. The guide, it specifically says that you usually just need a high school diploma to get started, at least for those entry-level jobs. But once you start looking at those higher-level roles, supervisor, specialist, whatever, having a bachelor's degree, that can give you a serious leg up.
What kind of degrees are we talking about here? Like, would a business degree be useful in this kind of environment?
It could be, especially if you're thinking about going the management route. But we're also seeing degrees in like supply chain management, industrial engineering, even like really specific programs for leather work and, footwear design. It all depends on what kind of path you're trying to carve out for yourself.
It makes you realize that a lot of these fields that we think of as separate, like manufacturing's over here, tech's over there, there's actually a ton of overlap. The stuff you learn in a supply chain management program, that applies to making luxury handbags and figuring out like global logistics for some tech giant.
Exactly. And it brings up a really important point for, well, anyone listening, really, whether you're thinking about a career change or just curious about different industries. Don't underestimate the skills you've already got. Your experience with managing projects, communicating effectively, problem solving, those are valuable no matter where you go.
Speaking of finding the right career path, finding the right environment, got to bring up RoleCatcher again. I mean, we've been talking about how this career goes, but what about the people out there right now trying to actually land one of these jobs? It's a jungle out there.
No kidding. The job market's intense. And that's where tools like RoleCatcher come in. They're a game changer, especially for folks just starting out, when it's tough to make your resume stand out from the crowd.
It's like they've bottled up all that like insider knowledge about how hiring actually works and made it accessible. I'm obsessed with their interview prep stuff. They have this insane database of interview questions. I think it's over 120,000. And they're all like tailored to specific jobs, specific industries. It's wild.
Right. They've basically gone through like thousands of job descriptions and actual interviews, figured out exactly what employers are looking for, and then they use all that data to help people write killer resumes and just crush those interviews.
So instead of just blasting out the same generic resume to a million places and hoping for the best, you can actually target your application. Highlight the skills and experience that actually matter for that specific role, that specific company.
Exactly. And honestly, in today's world, with automation changing everything, that kind of strategy, that's what makes all the difference.
It's like having like a secret weapon, right?
Right.
Especially because nowadays, so many applications, they get screened by computers, by algorithms, before a human even looks at them.
Yeah, not wrong. And it's funny, we always talk about automation, like, oh, robots are going to take our jobs, but we don't always talk about how it's changing how we even get those jobs in the first place. Tools like RoleCatcher, they're not just like a nice to have anymore. They're becoming essential, especially if you want to, stay ahead of the game.
Feels like we've come full circle here. We started off talking about how important those human skills are, even, or maybe especially as things get more automated. And now we're seeing how tech can actually help us get better at those skills, help us find the right opportunities. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
It is. It all comes back to adaptability, don't you think? The working world, it's changing constantly. And the people who are going to thrive, it's the ones who are willing to learn new things, try new tools, embrace the changes.
So true. And that brings us back to, well, the reason we're here, the Leather Goods Production Supervisor. We talked about the skills you need, the different paths you can take, how the whole industry is evolving. But as we're wrapping up here, there's one question I keep coming back to, and I think it's an important one for everyone to consider. The guide mentions automation, right? How it's affecting leather goods production, creating new jobs, but maybe pushing others out. So here it is, the big question. Is automation ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Something to think about.
The million-dollar question for sure. And it goes way beyond just this one field. What we do know is that the future of work, it all comes down to how well we adapt, how well we collaborate, how willing we are to keep learning and growing. Those human skills we keep coming back to, that's what's going to set us apart no matter what the future holds.
Such a good point to end on. Knowledge is power, right? And we hope this deep dive is giving you some new insights into a career path you might not have even considered before. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep on diving deep.